Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 223 of The Reformed Gamers, a show about theology, video games, and do you buy your games digital or physical? You gotta let us know. I'm one of your hosts, Logan.
And I'm his co-host, Micah.
Micah, man, first of all, dear listeners, welcome back to another episode of The Reformed Gamers. Second of all, Micah, it looks like, are you working out? Are you wrestling? Man, you're rocking the tank top.
No, it's like I said in the past, man, this room and it's summertime, it's so hot. I gotta keep cool. So I'm like over here like Benji Sales on YouTube, if you know who that is. Always rocking the tanks. So, just staying cool in the summertime,
Thought you were just coming into the show, just showing off your guns, man.
I don't work out at all, so I have no guns to even show off. So
he says that, but watch, we'll be talking about the topic later, and he'll just be like, 200, 201. I don't know why you would sound like Solid Snake.
Have you heard about the new Stray? I don't know why I would be flexing doing that.
Heard about the new Stray. I don't know why I'm picturing you like talking. Like, I'm going to stop.
We're already off the rails.
It is what it is. Anyway, dear listeners, welcome to another episode of The Reformed Gamers. In case you didn't notice by the title of the episode, we're going to be talking about digital versus physical games on this episode of the podcast. Just kind of with a lot of things going on in the news regarding digital versus physical games. So I figured, you know what? Let's talk about it a little bit, go over some of the new stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But before we get into the episode proper, housekeeping, to clean some things up first, a little bit of housekeeping. Short and sweet, go over to YouTube, youtube.com/thereformedgamers, hit the subscribe button, and then check out my latest video going over, basically, it's already been a year since I did the, kind of focusing on my backlog challenge. I failed that challenge spectacularly and did a video just going over some of the things I learned, some things that will hopefully help you as you are tackling your backlog, or as I prefer to call it, a library. And also at the same time, I want to make a special shout out to Nate McKeever at the Backlog Breakdown podcast. Y'all, he needs our prayer. He needs to see the light that it's okay to view games as a library and not a backlog, because backlogs are burdensome. Libraries are liberating. I'm only bringing this up in jest because he was kind of throwing some shade my way over the weekend, but no, it's all good. Go
backlogs are burdensome, which is why they're breaking them down. They want to get rid of those backlogs.
They're breaking those burdens, so to speak. I like it. Go. I like it. No, I'm just giving them a little bit of a hard time. But yeah, go check out that video. Hopefully it'll help you if you have any tips yourself on how you tackle your backlog, how you go after that stuff. Leave it in the comments on that video, so that way as people go and watch it, they can scroll through the comments and be like, oh, I didn't even think about this. It's a good idea. And then they can carry on with their gaming.
Now, Logan, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's a different sort of metric for the YouTube Shorts, these really kind of short videos you post on there. But I saw this Fall Guys Bean video that has almost 10,000 views or something. Am I mistaken?
It's right now. I checked it before we went live. It's sitting at 16.2 thousand views right now. Okay. YouTube Shorts are insane, man. That's insane.
Kind of crazy traction. I didn't know it was. Is that like standard, or is that still a good? I guess
if you watch people like Roberto Blake and really Roberto Blake is the only one that comes to mind right now. YouTube Shorts are basically YouTube's answer to TikTok, and so their algorithm is just bonkers to where you can upload something and the video might get like 200 views, or it might be like that Fall Guys video where it just skyrockets out of nowhere and just gets a huge amount of traction.
It hits the algorithm correctly.
It just hits it real nice, and it just goes crazy. And so it's been wild to watch that. Just wake up every day, check the stats, and see it go like another couple thousand. And it's like, what in the world is going on?
Very cool.
So that's been a fun little experiment over on the YouTube channel, is just messing around with shorts and seeing how they do. So that was a fun little experiment.
Yeah.
But yeah. So over youtube.com, y'all go check it out. Without further ado, let's get into the show proper with a little bit of what have we been playing. And speaking of Fall Guys, Micah, let's jump over to you, man. What have you been playing?
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the TRG community. I was able to hop into one of our Fall Guys Fridays this past Friday. Logan and I, we hopped in a match with a couple of guys and hung out for a while. And Fall Guys is just kind of that that perennial flower that just keeps on coming back and just keeps on giving.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. They've added. This is one of the first times since it's gone free to play that I've jumped in genuinely and played several rounds. And there's so many new games that I didn't recognize or variations on traditional games that I'm used to. So they're keeping it fresh. It's just always a riot when you get on with friends, or even if solo sometimes. Just the way that the thing, that all the variables come together, you just don't know how it's going to play out on any given match. So it's just a hoot. Of course, I'm not going to talk much about Fall Guys, but just shout out Fall Guys Fridays. We're going to do that, for the foreseeable future. I get on Fridays around 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern, and join us over there. Hop in the Discord and let's play some Fall Guys. I talked at length a good bit last time about Final Fantasy IX, and I'm nearing the end of that game.
Nice.
I am on. I can go play the final boss encounter, I think, like the final couple of hours or whatever, to get to those last slew of bosses. So I've pretty much played the whole game. And, all my thoughts that I said the last episode are solidified, great music. I really love this cast of characters. It's one of my more favorite cast of characters in general. It's sort of a hodgepodgey a little bit. The story takes a little while to get going, in my opinion, kind of really in disc 3. It really picks up. Not that it's boring up until that point, but it really kind of goes in places that you weren't quite necessarily expecting, where kind of the scope really broadens out. And so I'm enjoying all that. I think, I was trying to, I'm not done with it exactly, but I was trying to think, like, how does this line up, in my opinion, against other Final Fantasy games? And I'm thinking, like, I think it's better than 8. I think it's better than 15. And I think it's better than 10. I don't think it's better than 7. But of course, it's 7 has a soft spot in my heart as one of my first JRPGs I ever played.
Real quick, was Final Fantasy 7 your first Final Fantasy?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So big context there. I've only played 6 out of the ones before.
Wow.
7. Yeah, I've only.
So you haven't played 4, 5, or any of those before that?
Correct. I have not played those.
Wow.
I would like to get to them at some point. But first things first with 9. But I'm liking this one a good bit. It's been a great kind of, like I said last time, it's like it feels both nostalgic and new at the same time, because I've never played it. But it all those trappings from the PS1 of 7, 8, and 9 are all there, and it just feels like kind of like a warm blanket to cuddle up to a little bit.
Yeah, man. So I gotta know, and part of this is, I already responded to this on Twitter, but what's the deal with Vivi, man? Out of all the characters that you love so much, why is Vivi not in your top 4?
Well, I love Freya. Freya's awesome. She's just got a great, just kind of her whole. I like how her whole demeanor, I guess is the word I was looking for, how she carries herself. And I love summoners in any Final Fantasy. So I got to go with Aiko and Garnet / Dagger. And then I put Quina on my post that you're referring to. Quina was my 4th favorite one because she is just so hilarious. How it talks, and just when in the one part in the story when it accidentally marries Vivi, he's like, "I so happy." It's just super funny. I love Quina and that blue magic. So, but Vivi is right there, and of course, classic, Final Fantasy character that shows up in Kingdom Hearts and other places like that. But yeah, I love Vivi as well. Yeah,
just not in your top 4.
Just not my top 4. Yeah.
Oh man, I'll be honest. So I haven't finished Final Fantasy 9. That's another one I need to get back to and finish. But one character that I really gravitated towards, and this is just because he's kind of the comic relief. He seems like he's always clumsy as Steiner, the knight dude. Dude was one of my. I love that guy. He was funny.
Yeah, he's always got to protect Princess Garnet to a fault almost, and he's really ignorant in a lot of ways. He's he and Quina offer a lot of comedic relief. It's got a great little charming story. Final Fantasy IX is great, as many of you probably know. Real quick, I'll touch on. I played the PS5 upgrade, which was recently announced and released, shadow dropped for What Remains of Edith Finch. Annapurna Interactive had a showcase recently, and just on the day of, they dropped the the next gen versions for Series X and for PS5.
Yeah.
So that was a free upgrade path, and they added a platinum trophy to the PS5 version, which didn't exist in the PS4 version. So for me personally, it was more of a reason to go back. But this is just one of those seminal games, in my opinion. It's like a 10 out of 10 in kind of that interactive storytelling. It takes 2 or 3 hours to get through. It really, if you haven't played it, it's available for pretty much everything. You really need to go boot up What Remains of Edith Finch. It's a great story. And then lastly, and Logan, I believe you've been playing this one as well, so maybe you have some thoughts on it as well. I'm not sure if you have, but Stray, the cat game sensation that is available for PlayStation Plus Extra members, which is how I got it, and it's out there on PC. I'm sure it's a timed exclusive for PlayStation, so it'll be coming to Xbox later, I would imagine. But boy, I sort of knew what to expect. I watched the trailers, but I didn't really know all that much of what to expect. But man, I have just been smitten by this game, Logan. It is. I'm not a cat person. I don't hate cats. I'm a dog person, but it just feels great walking around doing all these cat-like things. Where there's a dedicated meow button. Just press circle and you're meowing. Even during cutscenes, you can meow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was annoying my dog so much with that meow button. It was entertaining to say the least.
My dog was very glued to the TV while I was doing that. But just you can like scratch and like make biscuits on rugs and just like walk on computer keyboards or pianos.
That was one of my favorite things to do.
Lots of really great touches that they put in just to kind of make you feel like a cat, and just sort of the way you slink around and can get through tiny places. It kind of took me a minute to sort of wrap my head around, like, I'm not a man. This door doesn't impede me. Like the bottom fifth of the door is like a grill, so I can just walk through it. I'm like, oh, that's the way I go. It's just through the door. So little things like that are really, really neat. The reason I love it so much, though, is that the art direction and the atmosphere and the lighting, combined with the music, which is this really good kind of lo-fi synth kind of beats, it's really, really great. And it sets up the world nicely, which is inhabited entirely by these robots. There are no humans around. You're in this kind of underground bunker that has hundreds foot sort of cement walls where there's some sort of event happen, and this is sort of like a bunker to go to for a safe haven. And all these robots are down here, and they're talking to you, and they're acting like humans, and they run bars, and they're sweeping the floor and doing things that humans would do. And it's just all the whole like script and dialogue is just really endearing and charming. And I found that the story kind of had a lot of heart, I guess is the good word for it. So it was just, I just really enjoyed my time with it a lot, so much so that, Logan, I don't want to get premature necessarily, but I think this is my favorite game I've played this year.
Yep. It's funny. I remember you had said something about that in the Fantasy Critic League group chat, and I'd come back like an annoying little junior high kid, like, I wouldn't call it game of the year. But I sat and thought about it the rest of the day. I'm like, you know what? I don't really have any problems with the game, because first of all, I saw like one trailer of it when they revealed it and was like, cool, I'll check it out, and didn't really watch much beyond that. I also was very surprised by this game. I tweeted out, I hate cats, but I am loving Stray. Like, everything you said is spot on with the game. I can't think of one thing that I hated about the game.
It's really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying there was like one minor annoyance, maybe with like the, I can't even remember what it was now, because I'm so far removed from it. I didn't expect the game to be, it's not a horror game, but there's some moments where there's like definitely tension, and it's a little scary. But I was surprised by this game. I don't know if I would say it's like my favorite game of the year, but I will gladly say it's definitely my favorite like indie game of the. It's hard to even think of this game as an indie game. with the
No,
high levels of production.
it's got great production values. And Annapurna Interactive seems to have a knack for kind of locating these sort of diamonds in the rough. But it's really well scoped out. And one thing that I'm glad I remembered to mention here, when you wrote, Logan, your review on GG for Stray, you mentioned the game Inside.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I was thinking about, I'd already beaten the game at that point, and I was thinking about it, and the game that came to mind before I even read your review was Inside. And it's because it's not that it's as good or whatever. I'm not comparing them. They're not a one for one. It's just I think they're both well scoped out. They know what they want to do, and no more. And there's no real mistakes. Like, I'm playing it, and like you said, there's no real like what's wrong with this game? I'm thinking I may be frustrated by when you have to run away from Zerks. Sometimes those little creatures that try to chase you.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'm having a blast. I'm engaged the whole time.
Yeah.
And by the time it's over, I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. That was a good 6 hours. And it's hard to look back at it and say like, well, what was wrong with it? It's not a platforming game, and that's okay. I like that it's sort of like, hey, you can go to this ledge, or you can turn that off, those button prompts if you want to. But it's just sort of saying like, hey, this is the way to go. If you want to jump on this thing, you can do that. It's just really great. I've loved my time with it. I think it's priced at $30 if you have to buy it, which is a good price. Wait for a $15 or $20 sale if you must. But if you think like for the length, 6, 7, 8, 10 hours, if you want to get the completionist trophy. I absolutely love it, and it is in my top. It will be in my top 5, I would assume, at the end of the year for sure.
So to add some even more context, kind of like why I was referencing Inside, was because when you play Inside, the more you play it, the more you kind of peel back the layers of the onion, and you find out there's more to this than what you first initially thought. And that's kind of what it felt like with me for Stray. The more I play, I was like, oh man, there's more stuff I'm learning about this world. There's more things I'm learning about, things I won't get into for spoiler reasons. And again, I only watched one trailer, so maybe they hadn't showed some of that stuff in other trailers and I just missed it. But for me, it was just like, there's more to this game than what I initially thought there was. And it's a joy to just keep playing it and seeing where it goes and seeing some of those things. And man, the other thing I loved with this that I wish more games did was on the PS5, it took full advantage of the card system, like giving you hints and things like that. It never outright told you where to go, but it gave you like little breadcrumbs like, oh, hey, remember this person you talked to? And then that was the hint. I'm like, that's right. I do remember talking to them. I'm going to go to there. And then that would kind of lead me on. I never felt lost and I never got stuck in this game. And that was huge for me. And it didn't know where to say its welcome. It was a perfect length, in my opinion. It's funny. The more I think about it, and the more I just kind of like analyze the game and just kind of what it did really well, I'm like, maybe I will put this up there with Elden Ring and Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Like it.
Yeah.
When I try to think, like when I really try to critique the crap out of this game and think of like what's bad about this, I can't come up with anything, without being a curmudgeon. And so Stray is my biggest surprise of the year, man.
Yeah, if you're a cat hater, you wouldn't like it, maybe. But
I am a cat hater, and I loved it. So that's the thing. I hate cats, but I love the game. It was so good. I think me and Adam both were like, maybe cats aren't so bad after we finished this game. And Adam was like, oh, this is all propaganda to get us.
Well, and of course, if you're playing on the PC version, you can mod in Garfield, and
I saw that.
there's
you can play a Spyro,
like, mods.
Dude, that's so good. I can't wait for them to mod in Gollum so you can play as Gollum, Tommy Pickles, and
TP Gollum.
He haunts my dreams, man. He haunts my dreams, or graces my dreams. I don't know. Depends on your perspective. But speaking of things, is that all we have to say about Stray? Is there anything else we want to add?
I think so. I'm pretty much tapped out on it. I love it. It's a fantastic game. Yeah,
man. It's biggest surprise of 2022 for me. As far as what I've been playing, finished Lost Odyssey, 50 hours. Actually, I think it's like 49 hours, 22 minutes, but it doesn't factor in all the times I got, crushed and had to restart or reload a save. So I'm sure it was well over 50 hours that I put into Lost Odyssey. Did as much of the optional side stuff as I possibly could. Didn't do the fighting arena stuff with Cook because I just didn't care for it. But I fought all the other optional enemies, fought the super boss, which was insane. I posted a short little clip of it on my Twitter if anyone wants to go check it out. Nearly wiped my entire party, and I somehow came back and took him down. Wild. I'm going to save most of my thoughts for the video review that I'm going to be doing, because that's a thing that the audience over there wants now, is me reviewing JRPGs, or at least that's what I'm thinking. And I'll say this. I spoke highly of this game before I played it again this year. It was one of my favorite JRPGs on the Xbox 360. I still really enjoy the game, and I was telling my wife this, that game came out in 2008. Here we are in 2022. We've had so many good JRPGs since then that in a few ways, I don't think the game has aged very well. Obviously, graphics I'm not factoring that in. It was 2008. Limitations doesn't bother me. I do think the character's eyes look a little goofy, though, from time to time, but that's just a limitation thing. No Tommy Pickles level of goofiness, but definitely goofy in itself. My main gripes are basically with how the game has this weird approach to leveling your characters. Like you can't really grind out experience until you hit disc 4, and that's when the game opens up for you and you go check things out. You can go grind different areas and do all that. And that's what I like to do in JRPGs. I like to grind out levels. I like to pull open a podcast or two, knock out some enemies, get experience, so that way I'm over leveled for the next thing. And that's what I like to do.
100%.
That's why I'm not even going to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3, because I'm 5 hours in, but like all 5 of those hours is me doing side quests, exploring, grinding out experience. So I can't really tell you much about the story. The world's beautiful, but that's about it. But this game doesn't let you do that, because as you go through the story and you go through each area, once you hit a certain level, like usually 2 levels above where you're at in the area, you either get 1 or 2 experience points, or it just cuts you off and you get no experience.
Oh,
and
so
I'm like,
it keeps you from grinding.
Yeah. At least on the first 3 discs. And I was just like, this is so weird to me. I've never had a game just cut me off on experience like that so harshly, to where, like, I get that the game's trying to do it so where the bosses don't feel pathetic when you go fight them, and that wants you to make use of your gear and your ring system and all that. I understand that. I still just wasn't a huge fan of it, though, because it was just like a huge kind of speed bump in how I normally play these kind of games. And it was just really weird to me. But apart from that, I don't really like the characters either anymore.
Oh, okay.
The only character I really liked was the main character and his wife, which is Kaim and Sarah. I was like, these are the only characters I'm cool with. Everybody else just kind of got on my nerves for one reason or another, and I'm just like,
so how is the overall plot? Is it pretty standard JRPG fare?
The plot is pretty basic. There's some things that I'm like, wait a minute, that kind of doesn't make sense given what you said here at this part in the game, but I'll suspend my disbelief because it's a video game. And the villain isn't all that compelling. He's just kind of your cookie cutter, like, I want more power to rule the world thing. And like, all right, dude, you're kind of boring. But it's your standard fare for JRPGs. It's bombastic. It's wild. There's a lot of off the wall stuff that kind of happens. There's definitely a lot of sci-fi stuff that goes on, which I actually thought the sci-fi stuff was pretty interesting. I had forgotten all about that side of the game, but yeah, it's not my favorite JRPG anymore, and when I compare it to Persona, wink, I'm just kidding, but it's just, it's not as good as I remember is what I'm going to say, but
sure,
I still liked it. The combat is stupid good, like, because you're playing Final Fantasy IX now. You know that when you equip a piece of gear or an item, your character learns what that buff is on that item,
right? And
then you can attach that to the characters, their skill. Same concept in Lost Odyssey, and I love how you can build out your characters however you want. Great. Ring system where you put a ring on your character, they wear a ring, and then when you get into combat and they go attack, you hold down right trigger, so you see this like ring that closes in on this other small ring, and if you time it right, you can get it perfect, and then that makes it more likely for you to enact a critical hit or enact a certain debuff that's attached to that ring. All that stuff is still top tier mechanics. I love that stuff, but it's just the other stuff that I'm like, man, I don't. This isn't as good as I remember it. But
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't hate that I played it. I can say that I did enjoy my time with it, but there was just some things I was like, whew, yeah, this is showing its age a little bit.
Yeah, I think maybe it seemed like at the time, we sort of touched on this briefly in the past. I think at the time, Microsoft was really wanting to get some Japanese flavor onto the Xbox, and they did that through this game and Blue Dragon at the time. And it seemed like it was just, they were sort of just trying to get a checkbox, and the fan base didn't really care. It was a JRPG that was look quality, so they jumped in and they're like, yeah, this is great, because maybe there wasn't a whole lot else to consume at the time. I'm not saying that was necessarily your view at the time, but I think a lot of people look back at that game through rose-tinted glasses, and maybe sort of like you're saying now, is not quite as good as maybe we thought. But it's a solid JRPG entry, though.
Yeah, and part of it too is it doesn't help that I just finished the first 3 Trails in the Sky games. The first Trails game came out in 2004, 4 years prior to Lost Odyssey, and it has a lot of mechanics in it that I think outdo Lost Odyssey.
Okay,
in several ways. So
yeah.
It's just it is what it is, but I mean I took it for what it was, and I still enjoyed it. I hated the secret dungeon that I went to, but again, I'll save all that for the YouTube video.
Yeah, be looking forward to that.
Yeah, and speaking of more JRPGs, I played the demo for Live Alive, which I found out that's apparently how you pronounce it. I thought it was Live I'll Live because that sounded cooler, but no, it's Live Alive. And I played the demo for it. Didn't expect much of it. Did the ninja one at first. That's one of the 3 characters available in the demo. Didn't like it. Thought it was hard, but I was like, all right, I'll try the other 2. And the other 2 characters just won me over on this game. It was I'm forgetting the exact name for the one where you play as the Shifu who's trying to find his next disciples. But I played that character, and then I played the one where you play as the robot in the future. And I was like, all right, it's my birthday's coming up. I'm getting some money coming in. I'll go ahead and pick it up. And I'm almost done with the future one where you play as the robot. And it's literally, that character is literally Alien. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite sci-fi movies. And I was hooked. Like, I'm not going to say much more beyond that because of spoilers, but like this game really surprised me because I didn't think I would like it. But this game is kind of what I wanted Octopath Traveler to be. And it's really good. The combat's good. There's some stories that, like the near future one, you don't fight at all. It's just straight story. And there's others where you do fight, and the combat's really good. It's this grid-based system that has a lot of these buffs and casting times. Man.
About how long is each of the characters' sort of vignettes or whatever, or stories?
So the future one that I'm doing right now, I'm almost done with, and I'm trying to think, because I spent about an hour on each, probably about 2 hours is what his is. 2 to 3 hours is what I'm guessing would be close to it. It might be shorter than that, but the other ones, from what I've read, it seems like the other ones take no more than 2 hours to get through. Okay. I'm like, there's like 8 characters or something like that, a little bit less than that. So 2 characters each. I mean, that's a good length of time. And then if you complete each one, it opens up another story arc you go through. So I'm surprised by this game, man. The music's great. It's all around a solid game. And I never played the original, so this is my first time.
Yeah, I know that Marty Estes over at Nintendo Dads, he's playing it, and I'm just sort of following him on Twitter, and he's saying it may be his game of the year. He's really enjoying it over there. So it's kind of got my raised eyebrow right now because it wasn't. I mean, it was on my radar, but not really. Right. But after hearing you talk about it, seeing some of these other anecdotal reports, I'm like, okay, might need to toss that on the old wish list.
It's one to check out for sure if you're into JRPGs as well. I didn't have this game on my radar at all, and then I played the demo and was like, I need to play this game. Wow. And it came out a week before Xenoblade Chronicles 3. What are you doing, Nintendo?
Yeah, true facts.
I'm not just trying to be mean or anything. I'm just like, you can't give me 2 JRPGs a week apart from each other. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was bad. They threw Live Alive under the bus a little bit.
Oh, man. With that. But yeah, so speaking of nice surprises too, I'll end with this. I played the demo for SD Gundam Battle Alliance, and should come as no surprise to those of you who follow me on Twitter, those of you who listen to me on the podcast. I've recently been getting into Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam, over the last really almost year now. Over halfway through Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam as far as the series goes, and I've got plenty of them still left to go. But I checked out the demo because I was curious. I was like, okay, I got to see how this game is, and I want to see if it's something I'll enjoy. And it's basically a game where the premise is there's these different events throughout the Universal Century and other timelines in the Gundam series that are being disrupted. Events are not going how they did in the anime. And so it's your job to fix that basically, and fix the timeline, so to speak, of these different events. And so you pick your mobile suit, you go to the event, you try to fix it. Doesn't always go the way you thought it was, but it gives you clues on how to fix it. You go to other missions, you get your gear, you unlock more mobile suits, you level up the mobile suit you have, and then you can do some training stuff that'll give you more materials to level up your mobile suits, and then you go back and fix the event. So I was surprised. One, I was surprised at the demo having as much content as it did. Like, it's a good amount of content. But
which platform are you playing it on, Logan?
I'm playing it on Xbox for some reason. I'm not sure why I picked Xbox, but I did.
Sure.
And but yeah, I was surprised by the game to the point where I'm like, okay. The demo's like, hey, do you want to buy the game? I'm like, yeah, I'll pre-order it. Sure, absolutely. This was a blast. Okay. It's funny because a few episodes ago, I was like, man, where's the good Gundam games? I want them. I want to play them. And then I got Gundam Breaker 3. That scratched that itch perfectly. And this demo did the same thing. And I'm like, normally I don't like the little chibi miniaturized versions of the Gundams. It worked for me here. I don't know what it was, but it just, I enjoyed it. So, I mean, if any of you are into Mobile Suit Gundam, definitely go play the demo, see what you think, and let me know, because I was pleasantly surprised by it. So I can't wait for that to come in. And hopefully the trophy list is real nice, because I'd like to add that to my collection. You know what I'm saying? I got to get a Gundam game in there.
Of course.
But yeah. So, man, it's just, we keep repeating this, but we're eating good as gamers right now, man.
100%.
There's so many good games. The world may be a dumpster fire at the moment, but hey, at least we got a lot of good games to kind of keep our minds off that at the moment. But speaking of the world and things being cray-cray, some news, a little bit of news roundup. There's two things we're going to talk about. The third one being the topic itself, but wanted to talk about a couple of things here. This first one being we have information, Micah, of what the next Tomb Raider game is going to be like, and how Lara may not be the same Lara that we're used to. For those who are unfamiliar, this episode of Sacred Symbols is now out, so you can go listen to it. It's titled Jawbreaker, which is what the code name for the game is called, where Colin basically got a script of the game, and he went over it on the episode. Kind of some of the, it's not the full script, I should clarify. It's not the full script. It's just two different readings that is being sent out to different voice actresses to try for the part of Lara, to give them an idea for the character and how she is in two different scenes. And so you can go listen to that. I'll have a link to that here in your show notes, so you can go check that out. But you can go listen to that. And it describes the game as Lara is, past the initial, like, becoming the Tomb Raider arc, and now she is seasoned, but she's facing something that she can't do alone. So she is bringing in a team of Tomb Raiders who have been inspired by hearing her adventures in the past 3 games, and so they're kind of out on their own, and she brings them together. They're trying to do this adventure together. And as it described in the script, she's a fish out of water. And I'm over here going, this is not Tomb Raider to me. Like, she doesn't do team stuff.
The whole, it's like a casting call, like you said, Logan. And it's like, we're looking for someone in your mid-30s, authentically British, this, the other. And it's like, it's like you said, it's a couple of scenes. And judging by the script itself, now, on the episode of Sacred Symbols, they pretty much lambasted it and kind of took it to they were just kind of making fun of it. But the script, it sounded like something that would fit fine in the last 3 Tomb Raider games that Crystal Dynamics has created, which is rumored where this one is come from. Even though, and a little bit of context, everyone knows that Square Enix recently sold off the Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, all those Western kind of studios to Embracer Group. That is still pending. So all this is still very much leaking out of Crystal and out of Square Enix. And we'll get to a certain aspect of this in just a moment, Logan, but to kind of stay on the kind of Square Enix part of it, there's a follow-up video that just was released at the day that we were recording this, where Square sent Patreon a DMCA saying, no, take this down. You can't have this. And so Patreon got with Colin. They said, okay, no, we'll take it down. We'll edit the video or whatever else. And they took out all that stuff about the Tomb Raider leak. So I think that goes to show the authenticity of the leak, that Square is like, no, don't be talking about this. So really, I don't think it's any surprise that there's a new Tomb Raider game being developed. I think it's a little bit of a story kind of where this one's going, but also, Logan, and I'll pass it back over to you. There's a piece of this that the source for Colin, he's just sending him the email. He's got these sort of like bullet points of what's going to be in the game. And Logan, take it away.
Yeah. One of the things, this is closer to the end of the segment. Again, if you guys go listen to it, you can see it for yourself. There's a note in there about this version of Lara, or this character, will be involved in romantic scenes with another woman. And I'm like, wait a minute. Hold up. They're turning Lara Croft lesbian?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've played these games from the original PC release to current, and that has never, ever, ever come up. Unless you read something into certain scenes, but again, it's not there. And she's always been shown as the kind of, I mean, that's really never even been a thing to begin with Lara. The fact that they're putting in there, it's like, what are you doing? You're putting her on a team, which it doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be the lone adventurer thing, and now you're changing an aspect of an established character.
It's just another example, and this recent trend. I think Disney is kind of leading the charge on a lot of this stuff, where they're just commandeering past characters and doing different takes on it or whatever, and being kind of liberal, not politically liberal, but just liberal with the source material,
right?
And
taking liberal
steps to kind of just change for change's sake,
right?
So that was the leak that Colin got to him, is that she was going to be involved in some sort of romantic relationship with a woman, which was part of this casting call. That's sort of one of the big points, I think, for us here at TRG. We shouldn't be surprised when the world is like the world,
right?
But just a disappointing development. I don't know that, for example, as my girls grow up, as my kids grow up, I would like to introduce them to the Tomb Raider games as they get of age. I think they're good quality games, but I mean, I don't know that I'll necessarily want to show them this game if it's something like this. Or I don't know that I won't necessarily, but I don't know. Right. It's just kind of a disconcerting trend, and just kind of bums me out.
And I want to make this point too, because I know there might be some people who come across this episode who isn't familiar with our work or us personally, and they're just going to project or assume things about us. And to be honest, I don't quite frankly care about their opinion, but I do want to state that what I am most upset with about this is that they're changing an established character into something they're not. And I've been putting up with this since DC did it to the very first original Green Lantern over 10 years ago, where he was an established character, had a wife, had kids, all of a sudden he's gay. And it's like, can we not just drastically twist an established character? Why not make a new character that is interesting, that might be a part of their character, and then put them in the universe where they're walking alongside Lara? I don't have an issue with that. What I mainly have an issue with is them drastically altering established characters. And it's just
100%.
It is what it is. I was talking about this with my wife, and she was like, would you be upset if they had that as like, let's say they implemented dialogue options, and that was a dialogue option where like a girl comes on to Lara and you had the option to deny her or accept it? I would be more okay with that than what is supposedly what they're doing with Lara. But
I think that's sort of, I think you hit the nail on the head from my perspective, is just stop commandeering these characters and making them what they aren't. For example, I'm a fan of The Last of Us. Many of us here, many in the community are fans of The Last of Us.
I was about to bring that up next.
Ellie, one of the main characters and the lead character in Last of Us Part 2, is a homosexual, is lesbian. And that does not bother me. That's a new character that is her character. And that's how the writers want to write it. And not that it's right or whatever, but that's fine. It wasn't like she was one thing and then, just kind of, not cool if that, and this is still early. This might not
Right.
come to fruition.
Yeah.
Everything that's happening with Embracer, the Tomb Raider game might change drastically. I don't know,
Yeah.
but this is what we're hearing. It seems credible. Obviously, the source is credible in Colin, and then Square Enix taking it down, I think lends more credibility to it. Like I just said.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then Logan, if you're done with that one, this next one here. So Sony recently had their quarterly earnings call, as all companies do around this time of year, and they were pressed about a certain topic, and the topic is a price hike for the PlayStation 5. And to give the listeners a little bit of context, if you didn't know, this past week is that Facebook/Meta raised the price of the Oculus Quest 2 by $100 MSRP. I don't think it was enacted immediately, but it will be coming up soon, I believe. And that's kind of an unprecedented move by a big tech company on a very popular, consumer-facing product. It's just like, we're just going to jack the price up $100.
Yeah.
I think we all know why. We're in unprecedented inflation. Not unprecedented, but we're in crazy inflation right now. I don't want to say unprecedented. I don't want to speak out of turn.
We can't call it a recession either, apparently.
Can't call it a recession, but we've got crazy interest rates, crazy inflation, and the cost of building these machines is getting higher. So of course that makes sense for Facebook, when they're looking at the spreadsheets and everything, to say like, oh well, this ain't really gonna cut it, so let's raise the price. So anyways, all that to say is that Sony was asked like, hey, are you guys feeling any pressure to raise the price on the PS5? And the guys kind of the executives sort of refused to sort of say one way that, not that they were, but it was just kind of an interesting little way to put it. And I don't know, with inflation and everything that's happening right now, are we in danger of something like a Series X or a PS5 going up in price when we already can't find them in stores hardly, or just now coming around to it? What do you think about that, Logan?
It's definitely weird, because I was trying to think through if there's ever been anything like this where like a company raised the price on a game console after it has been released, and I couldn't think of any. If anybody else knows of one, let us know. But it just was weird to me. I understand why if they would do it. I'm looking at the quote here that comes from the CFO, Hiroki Totoki. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, y'all can forgive me. It says, about a potential price increase for the PS5. At this point in time, there's nothing specific I can share with you about prices. I'll say this, just from that response alone, seems kind of like a nothing burger. Like, it probably didn't anticipate a question like that, and so it's like, I don't have anything to say. I could be completely off. I don't, like, again, my knowledge of video game industry is just, you hit a few buttons and the game comes out, a little beep beep boop bop. But it would be weird if they did it. I think it would be maybe not, I don't know, huge blow. It would definitely be a blow to them if they did do that, especially when people still are having a hard time finding PS5s, from what I'm gathering from.
You would be able to find them at that point if they raise the price.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, at that point, I feel like we've kind of wondered that though, with when this initially launched and scalpers were selling them for 2-3 times the price. We're like, Sony's just leaving money on the table. They could sell these things for that much, and they're just not doing it. And now here, the potentiality of that could happen. And I don't know. It's a weird, man. It's a weird time to be alive.
Yeah, to close out my thoughts on it, I don't think that they're actually going to raise the price. I think what this does do for Sony, though, is that for the PlayStation VR 2, I think they looked at the Quest getting a price bump. They're like, oh, okay, well, we got some room to play with then, or we can maybe undercut now and have an opportunity here. Just the options grew for Sony on that day when the Quest raised the price. They're like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can match that price and we won't look as bad, or we can just go $100 or $200 under, or whatever the case, and really undercut that bad boy and get some sales that way. So I think Sony was kind of hooting and hollering and cheering that day when they saw that news a little bit.
For sure. For sure. And yeah, so we'll just have to keep our eyes open, keep our ears out, and just kind of see how things go from here on out. But dear listeners, again, if you want to check out those things that we talked about here in the news, the links will be in your show notes for you to go check out on your own. Before we get into the topic of the show, just a quick reminder to rate and review the show. If you're listening on a podcast catcher, you'll leave a rating on there if you can. And then if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment on there. Be like, Logan, your beard looks fantastic, or Micah's got some big guns. Man, he should, what's that thing that Hulk Hogan says? Something about when the 24-inch pythons run wild on you. I don't know. I'm just.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not a wrestling guy.
I was. I saw it, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail. Anyway, just leave some comments. That helps boost things in the algorithm. So do reviews and all that stuff. Would love for that to happen. We're actually closing in on 1.1 thousand subscribers over on YouTube. So go over, do that, do your dear duty, and get it happening. So let's get into the topic of the show here, which is digital versus physical. Now, this topic has been kind of, to use one of your words, Micah, percolating within the podcast itself as we try to think of topic ideas and stuff for a while now. But it's kind of a perfect timing now because an article was just released over on Push Square, and I'm sure you could find it on other outlets as well. Link to this article will be in your show notes. That reads nearly 80% of all PS5, PS4 games are bought digitally. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this article because it's not that long at all, and I think it'll be good for context as we get into this topic here. But the article reads, physical enthusiasts should probably look away now because Sony has revealed 79% of all PS5, PS4 games sold during its latest fiscal quarter were for the digital versions. This represents a dramatic increase for the start of fiscal year 2022, a 13% boost over fiscal year 2021 to be exact, when 2/3 of games were purchased digitally. In quarter one of fiscal year 2021, digital purchases stood at 71%, so I'm still pretty high to begin with. The two following quarters saw the percentage drop to 62%, and then it returned to 71% for quarter four. The beginning of fiscal year 2022 sees the statistic at its highest ever of 79%. Interestingly, the amount of monthly active users on PSN dropped by 4 million across the latest quarter, suggesting there are fewer people using the service, but more of that user base are taking the digital route nonetheless. Now, as a graph here that I may reference at times, but if you all want to pull that up as you're listening to this episode, you can feel free to do it and see the graphic yourself. They continue on here and close out the article with Sony will even incentivize users to buy games through the PS Store in the future, as it could offer PSN wallet credit via its upcoming PS Stars program, which is somewhat similar but seems to have a little more perks than what Nintendo offers on their Switch eShop, where if you buy a game, you get a set amount of coins, which you can then use as credit towards game purchases. The article ends with, it's bad news for PS5, PS4 gamers who prefer to buy games physically as the industry and market shift further into the digital realm. Sony offers a PS5 system without a disc drive, but will that become the default option once it is ready to move on to the next generation? Come back in 6 or 7 years, and we should have an answer. Now, for those of us that have been kind of paying attention to these things, been playing games for over the last several generations, we have kind of seen this. We've probably partaken of this particular thing of just buying games digitally. I know when I got my Switch, it's pretty much 100% digital because I'm like, why would I want to swap the cartridges out? It's a mobile hybrid system. I want things on the go, ready to swap in and out when I want to play. Makes sense. And it just was definitely convenient. You download a game and boom, it's right there. If let's say you're done playing Forza Horizon, you lost all the races you're in because you're trying to play the game on the highest difficulty, and you want to go play something a little bit easier like Elden Ring, then you can go pop that in. That's humor, by the way, in case anybody didn't catch it. So it's just the ease of it. But I'll admit that we've seen this coming for a while now, this digital future, so to speak, thing. But I'm, at least over the last probably year, have grown a little more hesitant towards this digital future. And so before we get into it more, I want to just preface this with my goal in talking about this topic is not to persuade anybody one way or the other. If you want to be all physical, that's fine. If you want to be all digital, that's fine too. What I do want to at least talk about is this particular article here, several others that we'll reference here, others that we won't reference, but did at least were research sources for at least me, and some Micah contributed as well, that if you want to read, they're in your show notes. You can go check those out for yourself. But man, like I said, Micah, before I got into the preface, I used to be really all digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now, as I'm kind of taking a broad look over how we consume entertainment as a society, we don't really own anything. We all stream our music. I can't remember the last time I bought an album, because I stream all my music through Spotify.
Right.
All the anime I watch is through Crunchyroll or Funimation when their app wants to work. And now with games, we've seen this even more so now with Game Pass coming in, where you don't have to buy the game. You pay a monthly subscription. Boom, you get a couple games you can download and play, but you don't own it. And so we're essentially streaming or leasing a lot of this content. And it's like, as I take that in, I'm like, I don't know if I personally like that, right? I'm not one of those people who wants to go all physical and display my stuff, and be those kind of people and trigger people on Twitter about it. But I would like to own some of these games, like actually own a physical copy of it now. And I understand now where a lot of people are coming from. And so with that in mind, Micah, kind of what's been your experience with digital games, physical, kind of where do you land on that? Are you more digital, more physical, somewhere in between?
I like to do both. The angle that I come at it primarily is price and available markets that you have at your disposal to potentially buy a game. So, of course, if you go digital only, and I'll get into this a little bit more specifically in my case with the PlayStation ecosystem, is that you're beholden to the eShop for Switch,
Yeah.
and the prices or sales that they may or may not have on there. If you have a physical, if you want to buy physical or whatever, you can look at Walmart or Amazon or or however. There's so many other outlets to get the game where there could be better prices.
Yeah.
So you just have kind of a better selection. If you want to always get the best price, you're probably going to end up doing better physical. Now, sometimes you can get really great prices and sales and combine your gold coins for the Switch store or whatever else that you might have, PSN wallet money you have lying around, to get a good deal digitally. But by and large, you're going to be finding those sales in the brick and mortar or the Amazons or whatever. So that's kind of my angle. Is I'm always looking, it's like, well, where can I get the game the cheapest? I just want to get it the cheapest. I don't care if it's physical or digital. That's kind of my overall mantra. Now, with all that said, I own a digital only PS5, and now I think I've told the story on the air before, but the only reason, quote unquote, that is that when the day that the PlayStation 5 was like, hey, we're on sale, I clicked on that Walmart link, and the only one I saw was a digital one, and I grabbed it simply because I had no idea if I was going to be able to get one at all.
Right.
So I grabbed the digital one, and that's that. I haven't really complained or fussed about it. I'm like, yeah, I'll go digital. It's not that big a deal to me. A lot of people will talk about, and I think this is kind of a weak argument personally, but a lot of people use it is like, I don't want to get up. Who's got time to get up and change discs all the time? Like, I don't want to get up off the couch. It's like, okay, I see that.
As you bring that up, it brings to mind, because again, if you support us on Patreon, $1 tier or more, you can contribute to the podcast, get your write-ins and things like that. Alex Castellanos wrote in on the thread, and one of the things I highlighted on here was, he said, who has the time to insert game discs into consoles? Time is money. And it's funny that you just said it. To you, it's a weak argument. I'm over here thinking, like, Alex, do you monetize your free time? Are you losing money by literally getting up and putting a disc in? It was funny to me to read that.
A lot of people will say that, though. So I call it weak. While, if you took a poll, I think a lot of people would use that as like one of the primary reasons why they say, like, no, I like digital because I just like to be able to move on, pick the game from the menu, and that's that.
Yeah, I just said that at the top of the thing too, especially specifically with the Switch. With PlayStation now, I don't necessarily mind it because I'm like, where my games are, it's literally just like a arm reach away, pull it out, swap the disc out, and then I have to kind of like lean over a little bit and then put it in the PlayStation. So,
Right.
but
But Logan, of course, and we can get into some listener write-ins. I don't want to step on your toes, but I mean the number one, of course, the number one problem, like you said, with the digital side is that they could just sort of cut the cord on the access, whether it's your license and they just something weird happened with that and they revoke your license, or the fact that it's just not for sale anywhere. Like like they closed the PlayStation Vita store or the PS3 store or old
3DS or whatever.
any old platform. It's inevitably going to happen. So what happens then when a game was siloed on that sort of digital platform? For example, it's not a physical game. It's not a big $60 release. It's an indie game that you can only get digitally on, we'll just say the PlayStation 3, for example. And when they close that off, how are you going to have access? Will you have access to it? Is the publisher going to bring that forward? When you're talking about indie games, people ain't going to do that. Like, they don't have the money to bring this stuff forward and say, yeah, let me put it on the latest PlayStation, the latest Nintendo console. That solo indie dev or that 5-team indie dev ain't got the money for that. So it just sort of like, well, what happens to these games? That's the number one problem with digital.
It's interesting you bring that up because it just like unlocked a memory in my head here of reading that, one of my favorite games is Fury. Love that game. And when it got a PS5 upgrade, there was no news about if it got an Xbox like upgrade to the Series X or Series S. And the developers came out and said, hey, our resources could only allow us to do one platform. And so we did PlayStation for right now. Unfortunately, we couldn't do Xbox. We would like to, but it's just the money and the resources was just not there. So that's a perfect example of that right there. The developers, think it was the game bakers, wanted to put it on Xbox. It's just the money wasn't there. So they just had to pick one platform, and they picked the one with the bigger fan base, so to speak, which is PlayStation.
But I think what the article that you read at the top here from Push Square, talking about PlayStation's market specifically, 79%, almost 80% of all PS5, PS4 games sold for that quarter were digital. That's kind of staggering. I think, of course, this is, I say, of course, it should be noted rather that this is the highest number that I believe PlayStation has ever hit as far as ratio, is this 79%. I don't know if it's ever hit that high. I think it kind of just speaks to the overall kind of all the casual people, all the people that buy the Call of Duty and the NBA 2K and even people like I would call casual hardcore people, just hardcore gamers that just are agnostic. They just don't care. What we're starting to see is that the physical realm, and this isn't a knock, it is almost for the collector. It's starting to be just for the collector. And Nintendo, I think, has a particularly good grasp on just their user base is more of a collector user base. It just is for better. I think maybe it's a little bit of the age of Nintendo and the fact that their fans have really grown up and they've got that income now where they're getting into their 30s and 40s, even 50s. And they're like, yeah, I got money I can spend on blah, 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 blah. So I think that, but they've got a real kind of interesting lock on it to where one of the other articles I have here, it looks like the last data we have from Nintendo back of around February this year, it looks like only it hovers around 45% of their game sales are digital, meaning the majority of them are still physical. And I think that you see that play out in the way that just those Nintendo physical games, man, you don't see them go on sale. Because they know they can get you. I think Nintendo knows their fan base, and they know that you want to get that physical version. So they keep that premium price tag high. So just a couple of thoughts there, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I fully agree with you on just Nintendo seems to have that mind, or Nintendo players seem to have that mindset of collecting things, because especially as you look at even like the retro market, the hot retro market right now is Nintendo GameCube. The prices for those are insane. I saw someone say that they spent $140 on a copy of Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes recently, when last year at this exact month around the same time, I got it for like $80. I mean, people are collecting these, and the prices are unfortunately going up. And that kind of goes into Third Strongest Moles right in, where he mentions that he's not really against digital games, but following the retro game market has made me aware of just how much money you are leaving on the table when you purchase a game you can no longer resell or trade. Ideally, digital games should be cheaper since the product you are getting is less valuable, but unless the digital copy comes at a discount or the physical has a long wait after launch, I'm going to go physical. And so that's kind of a perk to going physical, is having the ability to resell. And plus, you never know if that thing's going to be like a hot commodity, so to speak. You know,
that was Adam Sutherland's model.
Yeah.
Then flip that bad boy. You buy a $60 game, flip it for 30, 40, hopefully, maybe even a little bit more, 45. Get your playthrough out of it. And that was his model, man. And there's a big argument, I think, there for that. What you gonna do with a digital game? You can't sell it. You can't do anything with it. You can't, it's almost valueless other than just what it means to you. So yeah.
And I like that you brought that up too, because just kind of as we think through this topic of digital versus physical and things of that nature, you mentioned a second ago about how you're beholden to that digital store or maybe the publisher, whichever one. And I immediately think to how Metal Gear Solid recently was delisted because of a license expiration of some footage they used.
Correct.
From like a World War. I can't remember which one it was exactly, but they used real footage from a war in the game, and the license expired and they delisted it. It still hasn't gone back up on digital storefronts at the time of this recording. You have other games like Jump Force was delisted. The only way you can play it is if you have a physical copy. And I'm sure there's more that we could talk about, but that's kind of the issue, is that those games can be delisted. And so in a way, there's no value there, especially since I don't know if people are aware of this, but when you buy a digital game, you don't actually buy a digital copy of the game. What you're buying is a token or a key of some sort that allows you access to that game that you can download to your system and play. But it's just a license that you really buy. It's not a physical copy of the game that you can, if you're trying to play a game in the far future, it's Fallout 76, and you're trying to play a game in your Fallout bunker, you're not beholden to an internet connection. You can just pop the disc and cartridge in and you're ready to go. And then you can sell it for bottle caps or something. I don't know. I'm just keeping with the Fallout theme at this point. But so here's the thing. Admittedly, Adam brought that up a lot on the podcast. Buying games physical, flipping them, make your money back, maybe make more money back. Didn't care about it. But now as I'm getting older, I'm like, you know what? That's really appealing. I like having that option, even if it's a game I really like. Just the option of selling it, or I don't know. I doubt my kids will want me to pass on my games to them because they're like, Dad, it's too many games. But it's just, again, I'm looking at this all objectively now, kind of a little more critical, but it just seems like there's more value from physical versus digital, at least when you look at it from that perspective.
Well, for sure. And, it seems like, it's only, I would assume, someone like Jesse in the group could speak more to it, who, kind of really dives into this sort of collecting world. But you would think that now that they're making less and less copies of even popular games, that the price is only going to go up. It's like, I'm sure they're not making as many copies of popular game A as they were, 15 years ago, just for the sheer fact that they're just going to sit there on the Target shelves.
Yeah.
So I would think that would create scarcity and drive up the price and so on and so forth. But yeah, certain really obscure games that get physical releases, or these limited run games, they have a physical release for a game, those things get snatched up quickly, man.
Real quick.
It's just like, there's no, it's trying to like find a PS5 or worse kind of thing. One thing, to kind of flip the coin over, and it's sort of kind of weird to talk about it this way, but the number one problem I think with physical games these days is that there's nothing on the disc, that it's a digital game. The basic problem with physical is that it's a digital game.
We just talked about that recently with God of War. The special edition doesn't even come with the game. And there's been other instances where it's just a digital.
For the collector, this collector's edition collector, you want no game there. That doesn't make any sense. So
why would you want the
with,
game disc? You're a collector. You don't need the game disc. You're going to be playing around with that Thor's hammer.
Of course not. Yeah. Getting it stuck in the wall. I think some Call of Duty games have been maybe, well, I think there's just huge patches with Call of Duty games. You're not getting the whole game on the disc.
Yeah.
I think the recent Halo Infinite didn't have anything on the disc. There's
That's
tons
what it was.
of,
I was trying to think.
There's tons of AAA examples. There's just big game examples where you're like, you go get the physical thing and it's a key to a download. And that, if I was a physical collector and I prided myself on my library and putting those games on the shelf, that would drive me up a wall.
Yeah.
Now I'm not that sort of collector. I've got literally on the shelf behind me, I think I can count like 5 physical games on that shelf. I don't collect that many physical games. Even when I did have more of that mentality, I was like Adam, where I was just like selling them and getting money to go buy more games and stuff like that. So I don't have much attachment for collecting them, but that would still like kind of irk me if I expected a physical disc and it's like, nope, it's 158 kilobytes on this disc and it's a key. You know?
Yeah, it's weird, man. When I first heard that some games were doing that, I was like, that is just so weird. Like, why even bother going through the whole process of producing a box and a insert and then shipping that out? Like, I don't know. It's weird to me that they would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. But I think, and I'm not wanting to delve too much into conspiracy theories on this podcast. That's not what we're here for. But
I'm here for it.
Okay, Mike is here for it. And I am not an expert on this. What little bit of reading I've done has been enough to scare me, but not to go and evangelize the people about it. This article has been up for, let me pull it up real quick here. I don't know when it was posted exactly. Back in 2016. Holy crap, that's scary. Back in 2016, I'm sure some of our listeners who are more in tune with things going on in the world, and this episode is probably going to get flagged somewhere because of it, but on Forbes, there's an article contributed by the World Economic Forum that says, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." Now, I'm not going to read this whole article because it's a lengthy thing. You can go read it for yourself. But when this first came out, and even still to today, you read it, and it's weird because at first you think it's fiction, right? But as we get closer, it seems to be a little telling, because going back to, how we consume content now as a society, we stream everything. Especially with the Xbox Game Pass, we don't buy any of our games. I've been trying to figure out how to go about this, especially from a Christian moral ethic. Obviously, the Bible does talk about property and owning, possessions, material possessions and those sorts of things, that we're not really supposed to store up those treasures here on earth, right? We're not supposed to do that. But the Bible does talk about, don't steal things from people, thus insinuating or precluding and even reinforcing other verses that every human has some sort of property rights, some kind of thing. And Nate gets into this a little bit in his write-in over on Patreon, where he says that he usually drifts towards physical, especially for games that he really cares about. In the long term, he thinks physical versions of games do a better job of protecting the consumer's rights. And I think we've seen that a little bit over the last year, but just as we kind of look at how these different services are more streaming based, you don't really own anything. It scares me a little bit that we might be going to a future where we don't own anything really, because that's just a really very dystopian type of future in my mind. But it also makes me think of the most recent issue with Ubisoft and how they were delisting Assassin's Creed Liberation. But if you read it at first when they announced it, even if you bought the game and had it on your system, you couldn't play it. That's how far they were going to go. Of course, they received a huge amount of backlash, and they backpedaled and was like, "Oh no, that was a mistranslation." But we all know they were going to do it. Sorry, Ubisoft, you can't pull the wool over my eyes on that one. It seems like it seems like going physical or buying your games physical pushes against that. But at the same time, I don't know that that's a future that we can necessarily avoid at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I think it's kind of, it's the end result of capitalism a little bit, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
For example, going back to the closures of the stores, how long can we expect Sony, for example, to keep the PlayStation 3 store open?
Yeah.
Like that takes resources and money. And, if we want them to make, if they want them to make Spider-Man 4 and God of War 17 and it to be these quadruple A standards that we expect, they can't just be blowing money left and right by keeping old things running. So how long can we even expect them? How long are they responsible or on the hook to do these things? Should we be holding their feet more to the fire? Like, no, it should be longer, or, no, kill them quicker so that you can put resources on other more important things that I like. It's companies are going to do what makes them money.
Yeah.
And you can't expect them to do anything else. So, I think, and I think most of our audience knows this, obviously, you got to know what you're getting into. If you want to go all digital, you got to be aware that this might go away someday.
Yeah.
I've got a huge PlayStation digital library. I can boot up my collection, and it's hundreds of games deep of just old games I've bought from years and years, and I can go play. And one day that might go away for some weird reason, or like someone might get my account banned or I can't access it, and that's that.
I've seen that happen before,
or something weird like that, to where I can't get into my login literally, and like all this money that I've dumped into that username is gone. That you got to be aware of that. If that's the road you're going to go down, if you're going to say, yeah, you're cool with all that stuff, then knock yourself out. I think there's a bit of a plight here for the physical collector. It's like, I think the physical collector is seeing all this and like, my world is going away. Maybe physical collectors just heard that and kind of laugh at me. It's like, the physical collectors market is better than ever and funner than ever and more engaging than ever. I think that might be true, but you can't argue with the fact that just average normal games, not collector items type games, or just there's fewer copies out there physically. And it's just the numbers right here, 80% on the PlayStation, they speak to it. Like, that's got to be a little bit scary to the person who's like, yeah, I want physical games all the time. Sony, are you going to keep making those with your 20%? That's it.
Yeah.
And they're not making as much money on those ones that they have to give Target and Walmart and Amazon their cut.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting world we're headed into.
Yeah. And something I kind of wanted to get into, because Josh had brought this up in his write-in, with how he much prefers physical games, because he says that I get to preserve it over hoping that the digital assets will be available in the future. And of course, he's thinking for his kids and beyond. He wants his kids to enjoy those and his kids to enjoy it. But he brought up the phrase preserve it. And it kind of got me thinking a little bit, because we've seen, and we've talked about this before on the podcast. There's an episode that I did with Matt Millsap. Y'all can go listen to that, where we talked about games preservation not too long ago. And I hadn't really thought about it from that aspect, where you buy the physical game, in a way you're preserving it. So if it does get taken off a digital storefront or becomes really hard to find, you have a means of playing it. And to a degree, you might be able to keep a piece of history, so to speak. Like, for example, I have a SNES cart of Chrono Trigger that I got off eBay, I don't know how many years ago. So if it gets taken off Steam or the iOS store, I can still play it. All I gotta do is pop it into my Super Nintendo, and it's good to go. In a way, you're preserving the games and you're preserving that piece of history, which, as we talked about in the episode of Matt Millsap, game companies just really have done a poor job of that over the years. Square Enix being the biggest offender in recent memory, because they lost part of the code for Final Fantasy VIII when they did the remaster, and they had to resort to getting a ROM online. So goofy. But man, I don't know. again, this goes back to, as I just kind of examine these things, it seems like there's more benefit to getting things physical than there is digital. I know some of our patrons wrote in saying that they prefer to have physical. They like to kind of have them show off like a library, like someone with their books or their movies. That's what they like to do. Don't listen to the people on Twitter who say that you're a sad human being for doing it. They're just upset because, I don't know, for whatever reason. But I don't know, man. This probably seems like I'm coming off as like trying to evangelize to our listeners, like go all physical. Don't let us get to the future where we don't own anything. But this is just the data or the info, I guess. Maybe not the data. That would be a weird word for it. But like, does this make sense at all? Kind of where, like, I guess how people are feeling, or.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Logan. I think about it, compared to other mediums, like music is the big boy where, gosh, I don't know what the ratio is or the exact numbers, but I got to think that the percentage of people listening to streaming services like Spotify or just purchasing digitally versus going and buying a CD or a vinyl maybe or something like that is so small compared to the Spotify's and stuff like that. And then you look at movies, there's still the movie theater experience, but I mean Netflix, Amazon Prime, so on and so forth. We're inundated with streaming and watching our TVs and movie, and not owning them. Again, few people have movie Blu-rays, just shelves and shelves of Blu-rays. That's not much of a thing anymore. Yeah. Books. I think books is probably the one medium that probably is kind of holding out physical, for obvious reasons. But even that medium is like, there are a lot of audiobooks out there picking up steam. A lot of people listen to audiobooks. My point is that when you look at music and movies, the writing's on the wall for games, man. And Xbox is kind of pushing that sort of side, I think, a little bit, where it's like, we're going to get to that point where they slowly start pushing physical out more and more, kind of going back to that kind of that scary reality for the physical collector a little bit. There again, I think it will create opportunities for the physical collector. But if you kind of fear, if you like to go into your music store back in the day and grabbing your CDs or your tapes or whatever, and you've got kind of, you missed that bygone era, then buckle up, man, because we're not going to GameStop anymore. We're not going to there are going to be more mom and pop kind of retro stores and stuff, I think, popping up, but like, you're just not going to go into a brick and mortar and go grab your new Mario game. You're going to go download it. Yeah. And that's just how it's going to be. Or it's going to be free in some service or whatever the case, because that's kind of where we're headed. So I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but going back to your Forbes article that you mentioned, that's just kind of where we're headed, man. That's kind of the end state of where technology and capitalism is sort of going to. And like it or not, I think it's a little inevitable, but I do like, even though I'm not much of a physical collector, like I've already confessed, I do really love, and we've seen it recently in the community, the pictures of people's like libraries, their shelves, really cool here's stuff. My action figures and here's my games. I've got hundreds of Nintendo games and hundreds of PlayStation games. And it's just like, that's cool stuff. And I really enjoy that, like, absorbing and that whole kind of angle of it. But it's just a dying art a little bit, I fear. And, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. These sort of trends with the physical versus digital ratios and companies and where they put their resources. It'll be interesting times.
Yeah. And I won't even deny the convenience of it. Like, Xbox Game Pass is insanely convenient. Digital games is really convenient, especially like, even if you're on Xbox, you got quick resume where you just boot up a game super quick. Like, it's mind blowing at how cool a feature like that is. So, I mean, I can't deny it. But there's still just things. I don't know if this is just me getting older or what it is. Because again, I don't know where this came from. Me just getting in this mindset here recently, but it's something that I'm definitely more cognizant of, and I'm just curious at how many more of our listeners are cognizant of that as well. Now, again, we've kind of danced around this a little bit, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this too. Is we for the most part, we are a Christian run podcast, and we're obviously not afraid to get into those topics here on the podcast. If you look at the recent episode about evangelism with Dr. Matt Queen, last year's episode with Colin Moriarty, where we talked about Catholicism, got into that, we don't shy away from that stuff. So Micah, I'm curious, man, is from a Christian worldview, and I want to be careful how I word this because I don't want people like misconstruing it on Twitter, I'm really trying to figure out how to word this, but what I'm trying to get at is it bad for us to want to collect these games when, we know we're not supposed to store up treasures here on Earth, right? So what difference does it make in buying a game digitally? And again, I'm not saying it's a big deal, but I guess kind of where does the Christian moral ethic come into that discussion?
Sure. I would say, are you, you obviously need to examine your heart about, what's on the throne of your heart. Is it these things or anything, obviously outside of God, collecting games? But I would say what I was about to say is, are you storing up treasures here on earth if you have a big, actual library of books, or anything, it's someone who collects anything, literally, stamps, action figures, whatever. I think the answer is no. Obviously it's like I said at the top, it's on an individual basis and you got to check your heart, but if you're a collector, are you storing up treasures here on earth? No, I don't think that's like a blanket statement.
Right.
Are you that you kind of maybe flaunt it, or you have this kind of almost looks like a shrine or something like that, some of these people's shelves, with the lighting and the action figures placed just so, and everything looks great. And, it can look a little shrine like, or a little like, wow, you really put an emphasis on this. It's like, that's just, it's just our hobby that we enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't think, by doing that on a base level is, you need to check your heart or anything like that. I think, easily someone could, like, I could have 1,000 games on my PlayStation, library or whatever. It's like, that's just as bad, if you want to call it that. I mean, you're buying lots of games and you're spending time on them or playing them or whatever the case. Yeah. So no, I don't think that is on the surface, storing up treasures here on earth or anything like that, so I'm kind of going in circles here, but sure. Yeah, check your heart and, just make sure that the Lord is on the throne of your heart and ruling your decisions and just kind of, your affections. So yeah.
That's good. I would even add, just because, and part of the reason why I bring this up is just because, for a while I was collecting Funko Pops, if people know what those are. Mm-hmm. And I had a good bit of them in my office at my church that I was working at. And, a lot of them were just ones that, my mom, she knew like, oh yeah, this is something that I remember from when you were growing up. So I think it'd be cool if you had that. And I was like, I agree. It is cool that I have that because it looks dope. Mm-hmm. But there were some people who kind of looked at that and were like, that's a little sus, whether it was like they saw it as an idolatry thing or like the classic kind of small conservative thing. Like, oh, you just haven't grown up yet, which someone literally told me that one day. And it's just, I think for us Christians specifically, we easily look at a collection of something, game, whatever it is, and fall way too easily into the mindset of like assuming, oh, it's an idolatry issue. Oh, this is what their treasure is, but it's like when we assume that stuff, I think we view each other uncharitably because for all they could have inherited that from a relative or, I think it becomes an issue when like that becomes your sole focus in life to the point where like it's starting to take over and manipulate and steal from other areas of your life. But if it's, we know a lot of people in the community, they keep that stuff in check. They're wise about it and they have a really good collection of different things. I'm sure some people have probably attributed bad motives because of my Gunplas that I keep posting on Twitter. but it's a fun hobby. I managed to find them cheap. Hobby Lobby. I mean, I'm just saying they put them on sale pretty regularly. It's not hard to find them.
I mean, yeah,
But
someone like that, that anecdote about someone commenting on your Funkos in the office. I mean, someone like that probably has, a collection of something else, a gun collection or whatever.
Or
It's like,
stamps.
everyone has their own thing. People, the guy that, watches football all day on Sundays, wagging his finger at you playing, video games for 4 hours straight or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, dude, you literally just watched a 3.5 hour football game and then you're going to watch another one, so it's like people,
it's uneven
like
standards.
That they can go pound sand. It's just like go get over it basically. Or they're just they don't understand your hobby and don't care to and just are being jerks.
Right. As the kids say today, they can go touch grass.
Yes.
I want to make sure I emphasize the grass part. I don't want people mishearing me when I say that. Touch grass, the green stuff outside.
But yeah, I mean. Yeah, collecting that sort of stuff is cool. I got lots of things I like to collect. I just don't get very far in it. One thing I started collecting is these video game art books that they put out. These really high quality art books. You get them for like Dead Space or Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy or Zelda or whatever. I like grabbing those when I can. They're pretty expensive, but they could be, 30, 40, $50 potentially. But I like grabbing those from time to time. And I don't have a ton of them, but I mean, if someone was like, "What are you doing here, Mike?" I'd be like, I like to look at these art books. That's what's going on.
Let's talk about all those football jerseys you got, Jerry.
Yeah, that's that.
Sorry if there's someone listening to the show that's named Jerry and he has a bunch of football jerseys.
With all those jerseys.
I'm not singling you out, I promise. But no, I think that's the thing too. And I don't know, this might be a weird way that the conversation has gone, but just the idea of collecting things, I don't think is inherently bad. I think we as humans just have a tendency to do that, to collect something. I think we all collect something. Mm-hmm. And whether, and getting back into video games, if that means, you collect your games physical or digital, doesn't really matter one way or the other. It's just, I guess I'm being more cognizant of like, there's pros and cons to both. And so just as I'm kind of getting older, I'm kind of trying to answer the question of like, what do I really want to do? Do I want a physical collection I can pass on to my kids? Do I want more digital because I just don't care? It's more convenient. It is what it is. I don't think it's going to usher in like an apocalypse or anything like that, but it's just it's a fascinating thing. And just, especially with everything that's been going on news wise here in the last few years, with the games being delisted, digital stores being shut down, especially this one here with the PlayStation games being more bought digitally. It's an interesting topic. And again, I'm not here to sway people one way or another, but I am curious to know, though, if you listening to this or watching this on YouTube, what do you prefer? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know in the comments below, and let's talk about it. Again, I pulled the patrons, and a few of them have kind of been like in the middle here, like John Harrison says that he's 99% physical here, so he leans more towards that. But if he's able to get a great sale on digital, that has a real appeal. He says removing Nintendo Switch games is not ideal after I experienced the glory of digital eShop games, and I'm right there with you, to be honest with that. Jimmy Chung is right there with a lot of others. He likes to display games like a library. And then John Hannon too is, he moved just before the launch of the Xbox One, and he had to haul multiple boxes of games. And so he's like, a big reason is I just don't have the space to store everything. And I'm right there with you. I've moved 3 times with all the books I have from seminary. It's a pain. I don't blame you, but he does bring up some of the things that we talked about. He's considering buying his favorite games physically on the event they become unavailable for download, or if there's some type of delisting thing going on. And he also envisions, there's a small part of him that envisions a scenario where being a Christian puts him on some publisher's blacklist and he loses access to digital products. He wants to be able to keep those games. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different opinions on it. I think we've shared ours pretty well in depth here on this episode. But with that being said, again, dear listeners, y'all let us know your thoughts. But Micah, is there anything else you'd like to add or touch on before we close out this
one
episode?
Quick thought, and I kind of briefly touched on it, but if you go digital, you can go all in on digital. You can't go all in on physical, simply because not every game is available physically.
It's true. a lot of indie games aren't. Yeah.
Like just if you basically are only going the AAA or major publisher route or limited game run route games, if you're going physical, like there's a whole swath, thousands upon thousands of games that simply aren't available physical. So it's just an angle I kind of didn't really think about. It's like, if you wanted to go all one way or the other, you can't even go all physical if you want to. So
that's true.
It's kind of an interesting thought, but yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I land right now. Like, I don't know if I'll ever go all physical, just because, there are benefits to digital. I mean, like I said earlier, the cheapest way for me to get Live Alive was through the Nintendo eShop because of the stuff I stored up. And I was like, I'd like to have the physical copy because the box art's really dope and I'd love to show that off. But at the same time, it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day. I just want to play the game really bad.
Right.
So it is what it is. But as I've said a few times now, dear listeners, let us know your thoughts and let's continue the conversation over on the different places that we're at: Twitter, Facebook, Discord, all those places. But as we round out this episode, it wouldn't be a TRG episode without some recos. I don't know if that audio came through clearly, but it sounded weird and distorted in my headphones, so I'll just assume it sounded great to y'all. But Micah, some recos, man. What should our dear listeners go check out?
I'm almost positive I've brought this game up on a past episode, but I'm going to bring it up again. Staying with the kind of lesser known indie games that I've been recommending here at the end of the episodes, a game called Speed Limit. It's developed by a developer named GameChuck, and it's available for everything: PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. This is a pixel art, two-dimensional, like high action John Woo style, like high action movie style escape game. Like you're constantly escaping from these different scenarios, and it's really pulse pounding, pretty difficult, but it's ultimately a short game. You could probably beat it if you know what you're doing and you're skillful, you can beat it in like an hour or less, maybe. But like you start off and you're on foot and you're in like a moving subway and you're like taking guys down, just boom, 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 blasting guys, jumping around. Again, it's all about escaping. And then you jump off the train onto like a motorcycle and you're going on the street in a motorcycle. It looks like old school. It's just great. This says old school pixel art, and you're in like a helicopter, and then you're in a like air jet. Just like, it's so cool. It's one of the coolest games I've played in recent memory, and no one I know has played it hardly. I know virtually nobody that has played this game, and it's a really great $10 game. It's $10 at the top, so it could go on sale for even cheaper. Speed Limit. It's high action escape game. I would highly recommend it.
So I'm looking at this right now because I'm like, listening to you describe it, I'm like, okay, I think he has brought this up on the podcast before, and I'm also just like thinking like, this sounds familiar, and I'm looking at it now. Yeah, this was a game I remember being on a Nintendo Direct, and I was like, oh man, I want to play that, and I just never did. I wasn't even aware that it was out.
It's really good. Yeah,
I'll be checking that out. That out. So this happened in real time. I don't know if dear listeners don't know or maybe some don't know this. We keep a live document for episodes when we record, and Skinner just dropped one in here to throw me off my game, but I'm going to add a new reco. So I've got 2 recos for you, dear listeners. One specifically to mess with Skinner a little bit, and one that like is like legit. I want y'all to go check this out. The first one is get into Gunpla. It's funny, Skinner left a note in there talking trash about Gunpla on our live document in the middle of our recording. I just bought a new model kit today because I discovered a hobby store. My wife surprised me by taking me to a hobby store today, and bought a Machine Dramon. If anybody's into Digimon and knows what that is, I'm going to be building one of those and customizing it, making it all silver and shiny and stuff. So that'll be a lot of fun. I just finished a Batman one that I will be customizing with gold and the different armor plates that he has.
Super cool, dude.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. When I finished putting it together and got the cape all done, I was like, oh, this is probably one of the coolest ones I've built.
Let me ask you, how long does it take you to build these models on average?
It depends. A typical HG grade, which is like the basic one, takes maybe 4 hours, if that, these days. A master grade one, which is like a couple steps above, that will probably take me an entire week. depending on the complexity of it. Actually, I should say a master grade will probably take me 3 days at most. And then there's some out there that are labeled master grade, but are much closer to the grade above it. Like there's one that I built. It took me like a month to build and get it together.
Sure.
So it just depends on the grade you build. The Batman one took me like 2 days, if that. And so it just depends on what you get and the size of the kits. And plus, if you're new to it, it'll take you longer because you're trying to get used to it and do all that. But the more experience you get, the quicker it goes. So it just depends. But if you start with the HG grades, the beginner ones, you could honestly probably spend an afternoon and get one done if you want to. And then you get into customizing, and then your whole life just goes away. But that's actually the fun part. So get into Gunpla, model kits. Those are fun. One of my new favorite hobbies. My other reco is back in 1997, on July 25th, the world was graced with a Good Burger movie. And here we are 25 years later. They released a special edition steelbook that I picked up. I pre-ordered that. And man, revisiting this movie has been an absolute treat. I've watched it 2 or 3 times already. The humor still lands for me on so many parts. If anybody grew up with old school Nickelodeon and remembers the comedy skits show All That, Good Burger was started off there with Keenan and Kel. Some of you know them. It's funny. You got Ed, the kind of aloof, goofy comedy guy, and then you got Keenan, who's kind of the more serious guy, but he's still friends with Ed. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a fun trip down nostalgia lane. I love the movie. And fun fact, there's a song that Ed sings both on the old TV show and in the movie where he's like, I'm a dude, she's a dude, we're all dudes. Hey, some of you probably like, oh yeah, I remember that now. Just from hearing that song lives in my head rent free. And I sing it probably every other week or so. It comes up. I'll just be sitting there just playing the drums on the counter or something. And I'll just randomly sing that. Some of my students look at me like, what the heck? Do what?
And Camilla loves it.
In her own way, yeah. But yeah, so go check out Good Burger. Oh man, a great movie to revisit. And plus, it's a clean movie too. If y'all are looking for a movie to watch with your family, pretty clean. Pretty sure I'm not forgetting anything. Yeah, I mean, there's Carmen Electra tries to hit on Ed, but Ed just dusts it off at every point because he's just like he just doesn't get it. So it's a good time. If y'all want to have a good time and watch a good movie, go check out Good Burger and have a good time with it. And yeah, let me know if you're watching it because it's fun to let us know. One of the ways you can actually let us know about that is over in our Discord. You can hop on over Discord. Link will be in your show notes and get into Fall Guys Fridays and all sorts of other things there. But you can connect with us in a variety of ways. Discord is one of them. You can get extra content over on YouTube. You can go to our website. You can go follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, join a Facebook group, follow us on Instagram. Links to everything will be in your show notes. And if you like what we do here at TRG, you can support the podcast over at patreon.com/thereformedgamers. Support as low as $1 a month. Get you early uncut access to all of our episodes, behind the scenes, and get you access to write in to our episodes as well. But with that being said, that has been this episode of TRG. Micah, this is a little new, and I'm kind of stealing it from Sacred Symbols. Any closing thoughts as we end this episode?
No, not really. Guys, go get your physical games. Go get your credit cards loaded. Get your bookmarks saved. Refresh those pages.
Get your credit cards loaded.
Get those collector's editions and get those limited edition physical editions. Get them locked down on your shelf. Okay, so don't be slacking here, physical collectors. Go get your games.
Yeah. My last thought before I end the thing. Next episode, I'm just going to tell you right now. Metal Gear Solid 2, Sound of the Rain's coming back. We're going to have a good time talking about the game. It's going to be a good time. And we're going to discover how creepy that game is and how it foretold the future in some aspects. But we'll get into that on the episode. With that being said, dear listeners, thank you again for listening to this episode. And be a dear. Keep it locked here. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Reformed Gamers, the podcast all about theology and gaming. TRG is edited by Dear Ear Productions, so thank them for the buttery smooth tones in your ear. If you're looking for extra content, head on over to youtube.com/thereformedgamers. The Reformed Gamers is entirely fan-supported over on patreon.com/thereformedgamers by our dear patrons. The following deer are at the producer level or higher and will forever be thanked at the end of each show, as long as their pledge comes through, or we forget to update the audio. Those people are David Matthews, Mr. Butts, Richard Moroccan, and Wesley Ray. Thank you for your support on patreon.com, keeping our controllers charged, and supporting Logan in his never-ending quest to collect them all. Platinum trophies, that is. So be a deer and keep it locked here. Keep listening. We'll catch you later. 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 Catch you later.